interdicted the Zimbabwe Republic or Public Republic Police and the University of Zimbabwe, from interfering with the protesting lectures. Are they respecting this interdict? And if any, what is the next step?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, we are so proud that the High Court of Zimbabwe issued an interdict in our favor against the police and against the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, against also the Minister of Labor, Public Service and Social Welfare, and of course against the University of Zimbabwe authorities, that they should not interfere with our action. You would understand that this is in the wake of what the Zimbabwe Republic Police had done, which was illegal, unconstitutional. They disrupted and arrested us. I'm one of the people that were arrested. The three of us as leaders, we were arrested for picketing outside the University of Zimbabwe gate on the 16th of April. But we had followed the law until we had advertised and even informed the employer and informed the police that we were allowed to picket outside of the University of Zimbabwe because it is legal to do so. And once you have been cleared and given the right to strike by the courts, you can actually picket. But of course, the police violated that and came to arrest us. Then that is when we went to the High Court. And the High Court actually made or did declare an interdict that they should not really interfere with whatever we're doing. And we are happy that at the moment, the Zimbabwe Republic Police are doing a great job. That is why yesterday we managed to picket without any incident. And even today, we have just been to the picket lines and we have just finished without any incident. The police are there. They are in civilian clothes and they are monitoring the situation. They have not disturbed in any way.
All right. Professor Obvious Vengei, because of time, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. There you have it. That was Professor Obvious Vengei joining us from Zimbabwe, talking to us about the issues that has to do with the strike of university teachers in Zimbabwe.
Get ready to plug into knowledge with Channel Africa Conversations.
South Africa is stepping boldly into a new era of industrial innovation.
This week on Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks energy. From renewables to policy shifting, innovations to inventions, and how it all connects to Africa's future.
Surely we can use batteries and battery minerals to transform Africa from an extractive economy to a manufacturing economy.
Do you want to stay ahead of the energy curve? Then don't miss our brand new podcast episode, dropping on Thursday, 24th of April on SABC Plus and on YouTube. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right. South African gold mining giant Goldfield has reached a deal with the government of Ghana to continue its mining operations at the Damang mine. This after its mining license was abruptly not renewed, breaking a tradition of automatically renewing licenses. This has created uncertainty about the company's other operations in that country. Ghana assumed operational control of the mine after it rejected an application from Goldfields, but it has now agreed to a transitional period that allows some operations before Parliament votes on this issue in the coming weeks. To speak to us about this, we're now joined on the line by mining expert Peter Major. Peter, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to African Business.
Hey, thank you very much. You only got one word wrong, and that was expert. I think you better put veteran or we're going to get sued, because it's going to be hard for me to prove I'm an expert, but I'm definitely a veteran.
But Peter, it's safe to say you always give us expert analysis about the mining issues in the continent. But anyway, let's look at the issues that are happening there in Ghana. The abrupt decision is cause for concern. Wouldn't you agree?
You're using all the correct words, Innocent. Yes, it is abrupt. It is cause for concern. And we've been trying to get into this government's head for the last 20 years that investment does not go where there's abrupt change, especially when it's negative change. And usually abrupt does mean negative, unfortunately. They don't need to be correlated, but they are. These are the kind of things that give Africa a bad name. Now, Africa, on the whole, went through this phase in the 60s, 70s, 80s, nationalizing mines, mineral properties, taking away rights, arbitrarily making decisions that costed everybody. And they seemed to learn by the end of the old millennium, 1999, 2000, most African countries had adopted very investor-friendly legislation, and it paid off. They got billions, tens of billions of dollars. And so we've been trying to hold most of these African countries up as an example to South Africa, who went in exactly the opposite direction. They nationalized all their mines, and they put in more draconian requirements than any of the countries north of us. But now we're seeing countries north of us revert back. That is correlated to dramatic changes in the governing bodies. You know, we saw this military junta take over in Mali, and all of a sudden they were virtually taking hostages and making huge demands of mining companies to pay cash that they just arbitrarily said, we've calculated, you cheated us out of this. And Ghana, it looked like they were doing something similar here with gold fields. Now, though, they seem to have pulled back a bit, like Mr. Trump with tariffs. And I think someone there is acting like an adult. They're saying, wait a minute, we've had a real good corporate citizen here for 30 years, created a lot of jobs, brought a lot of money into the country, and will continue to do so for decades to come. Let's not piss them off too much. Let's not make them stop wanting to invest here. And that's what happened. Goldfields has dropped all their capital expenditure on this DMAG by like 90%. You know, tens of millions of dollars just stopped.
Yeah, but Peter, I'm here keen to know your views or hear your views on the reasons why the Ghanaian government has decided not to renew Goldfields' lease at the Damang mine, and how big an operation is this for Goldfields? And would you say that then this leads to the regulatory deficiencies of governments in the continent?
Well, it can certainly lead to that. You know, it's portrending that kind of negative legislation. These are big mines. Tarkwa is Goldfields' single largest mine, and Goldfields has 10 mines, 4 of them in Australia, a couple of them in Ghana, 2. You know, Peru 1, South Africa 1, Chile 1, Canada 1. So they've diversified. You have to diversify because of this sort of random, out of the clear blue sky change in legislation can cripple you if you're not diversified. But it was big. A couple of years ago, this mine was putting out, I think, 230,000 ounces. And then in 2023, it was down to 153,000 ounces. The last year and a half, they're just mining out of stockpiles. But take note, when the gold price goes up like this, all of a sudden it turns a desert into an oasis. All of a sudden it turns a waste dump into an ore dump. And so I don't know the reason government's doing this. Usually when it's a change in government, the people in the new government are much more naive and uneducated how mining works, and they think it's going to be easy pickings. They see the gold price going up, they see the mining company making more, and all of a sudden they want more. And they don't think of the long-term or even medium-term implications. So I want to call it immaturity, because that's what it looks like on the outside. I don't know the real reason, but it looks like they're taking examples from Mali. And I don't know, did they have another party? Was it Russian, Chinese? Who knows? That says, hey, we want that mine and we'll give you money for it. I'm hoping that's not it. But it's not a good sign that you take someone stable for 30 years and just all of a sudden refuse to renew their lease when that had never been an issue. It's scary. And if it was a good reason, I think they would be making it public available.
Yeah. Peter, it goes without saying that this has financial implications, and I'm keen to hear your view. What are the implications for the company's financials, do you think, here?
This is going to hurt the government and the country more than it's going to hurt Goldfields. Goldfields has invested probably $1 billion in this mine. And they've been scared to invest much more the last year and a half, even though the gold price is going up, because government has played games. Government hasn't given them an automatic renewal. So at least Goldfields can say, we didn't waste money developing a mine, and then that mine got nationalized, and we've lost that money. But the financial implications are loss of jobs, loss of gold that was being produced that would have helped the country, and loss of investor confidence. Now the government's going to have to give better deals on gold properties and sell them at discounts because investors are wary to come in and do more. And Goldfields are now going to slow down on exploration. They might slow down on expanding or opening up another mine in the country because they're unsettled. So those are the financial implications for the country, and they're much larger for the country than they are for the company.
Peter, just as a parting shot, do you foresee Parliament there ratifying this decision, or it could very well be that this is the beginning of the end for Goldfields operations as we know them in Ghana?
I think I see Parliament ratifying this. I hope there's enough wise men in Parliament, wise men and women, that they will ratify this. I don't want it to be a parting shot and Goldfields is now going to pull off Ghana. Because of proper legislation and investor attractability, Ghana is Africa's largest gold producer now by a significant margin. They shouldn't be. South Africa should be 4 times the size, but they're not because of negative legislation and policy. So it's a warning, though. And it just shows you can't mess with policy. Policy is everything. And it's not hard to attract investment, but it's also not hard to chase it away. And this doesn't make sense. This is short-term thinking, and it gives African countries a bad reputation, a bad name.
All right, Peter Major, experts in mining, and I'm giving you this title. Please receive it. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us on Africa in Business.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, there you have it. That was mining expert Peter Major.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tame Ngobeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
All right, this is Africa in Business. You are listening to Africa in Business on Channel Africa, the African perspective. My name is Innocent, standing in for Tami Ngobeni. Join the conversation by finding us on X. We are at Channel Africa #1, on Facebook, Channel Africa, and of course on Instagram is Channel Africa 1. You can also subscribe on our YouTube at Channel Africa 1. But also, you can send us your stories to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or alternatively, you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. You can also send your comments and voices notes on +27 6340699126. We love hearing from you. In your comments, please do mention where you are commenting from. If you have missed any of our interviews, you can find them on www.channelafrica.co.za. Click the programming slot, and of course you can look for Africa in Business, and you can find a podcast of whatever you have missed. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon. I'm Nusipho Zuma. In your business indicators this hour, $1 is trading at 18 Rand 17 South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13.58. In Namibia, it is trading at 18 Namibian dollars 70. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 28 kwacha 26 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 133 birr 58. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shillings 648. 8. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shillings 687. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 610. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 50 Egyptian pound 93. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 98. In Algeria, it is trading at 131 dinar 60. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 9.13 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,853 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,295 and platinum at $969 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.63 a barrel. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
All right, it's time for sports with Figile. Figile, South Africa is behind the boys. Are we likely to bring it home?
Oh, probably we would like to bring it home. We will see how they fare, all of them. But this time around, Innocent, let me tell you, something transpired in Zambia. Football Association of Zambia, FAZ, sanctioned Ghana for Kidwe Derby chaos, where a large amount of money was lost due to stadium violence. Fans' behavior led to significant damage at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium, prompting swift condemnation from the government and FAZ. And Zambia's Minister of Sport, Elvis Nkandu, said government is deeply disturbed and disappointed with the turn of events. We are joined by our Zambian correspondent Namuchana for an update. Good afternoon, Namuchana. Thanks for joining us. Take us through what and how much has been lost during the chaos.
Yeah, good afternoon, Fikir, and good afternoon to all our listeners. For now, we haven't been told the amount that has been lost, or may I put it this way, the government hasn't quantified yet the damage that has occurred at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium in Ndola, where unruly Ghana soccer fans ran riot after their club drew 1-0 with town rivals, the Power Dynamos, in the Zambian derby. Actually, they got so incensed after the referee gave Power Dynamos a penalty deep in stoppage time, and to be precise, in the 98th minute. We were there. I can tell you, very, very disappointing scenes that we saw, and about 500 stadium chairs were damaged, and for now we just wait to hear, in terms of course, to say how much was lost. But in Ghana Football Club and the Mopani Copper Mines, which are the sole sponsors of Ghana Football Club, they have come forward, they have rendered an apology to the Zambian people, the Football Association of Zambia, FAZ, and the government. They have said they are extremely sorry for the behavior that was exhibited by their fans at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium, and they have offered that they are going to buy the 500 chairs and have them replaced. In particular, you might be interested to know that the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium in Ndola, which is a 41,000 seater capacity stadium, it is the only stadium certified by the Confederation of African Football, CAF, and FIFA. It's the only stadium that can host international games. So everybody is working round the clock to make sure that the stadium is repaired. And we only hope Mopani Copper Mines, which are the sponsors of Ghana Football Club, they are going to keep their promise to buy 500 chairs and have them replaced at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium. It was so disappointing, Fikile, because not only did the soccer fans damage the stadium chairs, but even in Ghana Football Club players, they went on to damage the locker rooms for the referees and the Zambia police. They had to arrest about 3 Nkana Football Club players who have since been released on bond, and they will appear in court soon.
So, Namuchana, take us through about now this kind of chaos. How much damage or how much is expected from the Football Association of Zambia to fine, or have they already fined Nkana Football Club?
Yeah, what happens is that the Football Association of Zambia, Fikile, they've got a committee that is known as the disciplinary committee, and from our sources from the Football Association of Zambia, actually they sat yesterday and they deliberated upon this matter. But on Monday, the Football Association of Zambia President Andrew Ekamanga, he came out strongly and issued a very powerful statement where he informed the nation to say the Football Association of Zambia first going forward will never allow this kind of hooliganism and criminality to happen in football. He said such behavior has no space in football. And he promised severe punishment to Nkana Football Club. You might be aware that this is not the first time that Nkana Football Club soccer fans are behaving like this. The last time they behaved like this, the Football Association of Zambia docked about 15 points off Nkana, and that made Nkana to get relegated to go to Division 1, and they spent a lot of their time in Division 1 before they bounced back to the Premier League. And the second time they behaved like this, the Football Association of Zambia made Nkana to play all their home matches away from Nkana, and they were playing those games about 500 kilometers away from home.
Okay, Namuchana.
Without any fans inside the stadium.
Thank you, Namuchana. Because of time, do you know how much fine are they likely to be fined?
Yeah, for now, what we know is that they're likely to be made to pay a lot of money. And another fine that we know is that they are going to be docked points, of course.
Okay.
That's another option that the Football Association of Zambia Disciplinary Committee has.
Okay.
But the last option on the table is that they're likely to be banned even for 1 year. But that one will be the last option, and we don't think that the Football Association of Zambia will take that route of banning Nkana for 1 year.
Okay, thank you so much. That's Namuchana, our Zambian correspondent, regarding the Football Association of Zambia sanctioning Nkana Football Club. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Tamengo Beni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Well, it has just gone 16:39 Central African time. Thanks, a very big thank you to Fix with Sports. On to this now. South Africa's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, in partnership with MTN Group, is set to host the South Africa-Nigeria private sector engagement session next week. The event will be held at the MTN headquarters in Johannesburg, South Africa, and it is positioned, of course, as a strategic platform to strengthen economic cooperation between South Africa and Nigeria, two of Africa's most powerful economies. Now, for more on this, we're joined on the line by Diana Games. She's, of course, the CEO of Africa at Work, Executive Director, South Africa-Nigeria Business Chamber in Johannesburg, and Professor of Practice, Johannesburg School of Business. Diana, thank you so much for making time. A very good afternoon to you.
Yes, good afternoon.
All right. Let me then begin by asking you what specific measures are being taken to address the regulatory and operational challenges faced by South African economic companies operating in Nigeria, particularly in sectors like telecoms, infrastructure, and manufacturing. And I'm asking this because, Diana, the challenges that face entrepreneurs or investors, it's mostly regulatory challenges. What steps are being taken in this event to address such?
Well, just to take a step back to explain the context of this event, it's being held under the auspices of the Joint Ministerial Advisory Council on Industry, Trade and Investment, which is a South Africa-Nigeria government-to-government and private sector initiative launched the end of 2021 under the two countries' binational commission meeting, during which time President Ramaphosa was on a state visit to Nigeria when it was launched. I was at the launch. And the idea of this is to engage the ministers in the trade ministries in both countries with the private sector to say, what are your main challenges for market entry, your operational issues, and regulatory and other challenges. These would be shared with the minister, the relevant minister in each country by businesses, and then the ministers would share the information for years, holding workshops, talking to businesses about what their pain points have been, what they would like to know, what opportunities they see, etc. Nigeria only came on board this year for various reasons, so we haven't actually really kicked off this at a bilateral level. The meeting that you just described from the press release falls under this. It's actually under the auspices of the JMA City, as we call it, the Joint Ministerial Advisory Council. And the idea is, as I said, of the whole initiative is to discuss what are the issues and can they be resolved? Are they specific to sectors, in which case different ministries would address them, or regulators, etc. Regulatory is an issue. And I think, but there's many other issues as well. And a lot of it relates to the broader economic climate in Nigeria, both with this government and the previous government, relating to issues like, for example, difficulty of getting visas, difficulty in getting foreign exchange, repatriating profits, devaluing currencies, and issues like that, and also tax, the high tax rates, the high cost of doing business, and these are all kinds of issues that are going on. But obviously, each companies have their own specific areas that they would like to address, and the idea is that the companies share these with the minister. And the difference with the meeting that's being held next week is that the Minister of Trade, the South African Minister Parks Tau, will be at the meeting, so business can directly share this information with him, whereas before we were holding private sector workshops with DTIC in attendance, but not at a ministerial level. So that's the backdrop. It's an important context to put it all in, because what it does say is that we are trying to do something about this. People always talk about South Africa and Nigeria doing business more, and we need to get on better, and we need to build the business relationship. And I think over the years, that has been happening, but it has been a bit of a stop-start kind of arrangement. It's quite dependent on high-level political engagement at a political level, and at the business level, companies are just doing what they do, and that's they invest or they look for business opportunities. So the idea of this is to bring everyone together into more of a cohesive South Africa Inc. type of arrangement, and similarly in Nigeria. So that's just the backdrop. Yeah,
Diana, we often talk about the importance of collaboration between private sector and public sector. But what role can private sector players expect to play in shaping bilateral trade and investment policies going forward? I mean, there's a need for that particular collaboration, but what is it that they can expect, these two players?
Well, I think that's a good question, because in Africa, I mean, countries, and you see it with a lot of Western nations, for example, where the public and private sector work closely together. They come on, on state visits. The private sector is very well represented at high levels, and so on. So I think it's very important. The engagement between the public and private is very important, and it's not just about the engagement. It's whether the government listens to what the private sector wants, because it's not like they don't hear about what the pain points are that companies are having, and so on. And it's a question of what gets done about it. So I think it's very important that we all work together, because I think there's just more strength in numbers and strength in having all the parties at the table, especially at a time of Africa. We roll along in crisis quite a lot, so I think the idea is to get a steadier ship that we can all kind of benefit from. And I think that really happens with best with kind of public-private partnerships at different levels, and that is what this initiative is as well.
Would you then say that this is in line with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area goals to drive deeper value chain in integration between South Africa and Nigeria? Because, I mean, these are the big economies in the continent.
Yes, they are the big economies, and they have not been performing at any kind of optimal level. In fact, we're starting to see smaller economies overtaking these kind of opportunities, and these value chains are being created elsewhere. So I think it's long overdue that more gets done. But I don't think, of course, it's a huge opportunity for both sides, but there is a lot that needs to happen. And of course, it's all it needs to be done in the spirit of the African Continental Free Trade Area, that everybody wins. However, there is a lot of, I think we see all the time stories where countries are not acting in the kind of regional spirit, but far more in a more national spirit. And I think when countries are going through turmoil, economic and political, they turn inwards. And we've seen a lot of that happening in South Africa and Nigeria, or between them, over the years. So the idea is we really need to say, and we need to get past our differences and say, well, this is what we can build value chains in, for example, fintech or financial services, which or digital economy. And I think those things are already starting to happen, but not in a curated kind of way. There's ad hoc things happening in all of those areas. So we have to sort of pull that together, I think, and just say, and I think a lot of it is about the positioning, about the narrative, and about the putting a kind of a structure to it. It's rather than everybody just doing their own thing. Because it's not to say things aren't happening between South Africa and Nigeria. They are. Although we have seen a pullback of companies as well over the years of our investors from there. And we are not seeing Nigerians coming into South Africa. So we still have that kind of situation. And that's what we have to look at, is what do Nigerians need to come to South Africa and bring their money here? And a lot of some of this revolves around sentiment, around perception issues and stuff, more than it revolves around hard issues like regulation and Forex, although those are, of course, important. So I think those are the harder things to address, of course, but we do need to address that in some way.
All right, Diana Games, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us on Africa in Business. We really appreciate it. But our hope is that this will also incorporate small and medium enterprises. There's always that general narrative, Diana, that the big businesses, they don't have time for small business. So it's important that we incorporate all of them so that we can build a better Africa. But anyway, thank you so much for your time, Diana. I really appreciate you making the time.
All right. Thanks very much for the time as well.
All right. That was Diana Games, CEO of Africa at Work, Executive Director, South Africa Nigeria Business Chamber, and Professor at Practice Johannesburg School of Business.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Tami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
All right, for our weekly business roundup, we are joined on the line by Victor Khomyeswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. Victor is also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. Mr. Khomyeswana, Tobel.
Tobela, Innocent, and a good Friday to you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Let's talk about Kenya's defense. Now, we do know that the military has launched a training program for law enforcement agencies in detecting, reporting of, fueling terrorism, financing, and money laundering. What really encouraged this move, and what do we have here?
You know, if you recall, Innocent, Kenya has always been the target of some kind of attack, whether it's the Westgate shopping mall bombing and Garissa, the university being attacked, and a lot of other Al-Shabaab related attacks because of, among other things, its involvement in Somalia. As a regional powerhouse, it has been involved in peacekeeping, and that has always not gone down very well because it has been the target of backlash attacks. So it is working in association with the Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition. This is a 42-member state counter-terrorist military alliance based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The capacity building is to disrupt funding. So if you remember, since September 11, the 2001 attacks in New York, the world has become much more vigilant in trying to stop funding for what they consider terror attacks, piracy in the oceans, and all other kinds of things, human trafficking. So the way to do it is to train the enforcement officers at border posts, bank officials, and people who might deal with institutions that can be channeling funding for terrorism. So this is the reason for this, because Kenya is a leading economy in terms of growth, in terms of ICT, and if you remember that there's also a story about cyber attack. So this is just a collaboration, multilateralism, making sure that because of its significance to East Africa, it is also vigilant in stopping this kind of terror flow, the flow of terrorism financing.
Yeah, Ndate Khomeswana, let's then talk about South Africa's Telecommunications Association. They now plan to lobby regulators and mobile operators in South Africa to implement a flat data roaming fee for people traveling between countries in the region. I mean, you and I agree that data is expensive. It's becoming a commodity, if anything. Are we moving in the right direction towards, flattening the data fees?
It is, if this one succeeds, Innocent, because it's actually not South Africa, it's Southern African Telecommunications Association. So they are wanting to lobby mobile operators in the 15 members of SADC, including South Africa, of course, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, because there are so many movements across these borders. There are people who stay in Zimbabwe, work in South Africa, people stay in Lesotho, working, and vice versa. So when you cross the border, you talk about data being expensive. Try receiving a call while you're traveling outside of your own country. You get charged so much. So the idea here is for the SADC countries to look at the way the European countries were able to do, just like they did with the Schengen visa. So if you're going to one of the members of the EU, you can apply to go to Netherlands, but once you're there, your visa can take you into the other members of the European Union. So it's the same story, that because of the open serve fiber networks, the CCOM cable networks, the fiber optic cables that are all there, rather let's try and create a protocol that allows people to travel. Why? Because we talk about African Continental Free Trade Area. It cannot happen across the African continent if it's not happening within regional economic blocks. And because Southern Africa is like a major contributor to the African trade and investment, it should be something that should have happened long ago already.
Yeah, indeed, I agree with you. I mean, for us to realize the true Africa Continental Free Trade Area, this has to be looked at. Now, sub-Saharan African nations are set to pay about $20 billion interest to external creditors in 2025. Yeah. I mean, debt sustainability, it does look like remains a thorn for African nations.
It's a pain. Yeah. It's a pain, especially because African countries are leading growth, Innocent. When you look at the fastest growing economies in the world, you find many African countries there. In the top 10, you are likely to find no less than 4 to 5 countries that are African. But unfortunately, if that growth comes with just taking the money that you create to pay off debt, not even pay off the debt, but pay off interest. China has lent money. Ethiopia, same deal. Djibouti, Ethiopia, Addis Ababa line. China has put some money. The African headquarters in Addis Ababa. China has put money in there. So some are grants, but mostly they are loans. The Kenneth Kaunda, beautiful Kenneth Kaunda International Airport in Zambia, also China has put money in there. So it's the problem that you are growing. Economic growth global growth is about 3.5% in 2025, but Africa is going to grow by an even higher percentage, 4.3 in 2026, 2027, even though there's still slow growth in Nigeria, Angola, and South Africa. But it's a real pain here because some countries are owing close to 80% of their GDP to external debtors. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, just as a parting shot, Senegal is well on its way to become Africa's fastest growing economy in 2025. What are they doing right?
According to the IMF data, I'm going to hazard a guess, innocent. They're expected to grow by 8.7%. IMF is saying that, ahead of Rwanda, which will grow by 7.1%, Guinea-Conakry, 7.1%, Ethiopia by 6.6%. Now, I suspect, because the main exports of Senegal are oil, refined products, gold, phosphates, fish, and things like that. And the interesting thing is their main export partners are Mali, India, Switzerland, China, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, with the story that Trump is saying, I will levy this tariff to this country, it's almost looking like they will not be affected by that. Many African countries are growing, but because they sell to the United States, their growth is going to be hampered, even if President Trump does not go ahead with his threat to impose all kinds of tariffs. So that's just my guess, that because their export partners do not include the top 5, do not include the United States, maybe that's the reason they are able to sustain that kind of growth.
All right. Victor Homu Eswana, author of Africa is Open for Business. Thank you for indeed making the time to talk to us on Africa in Business.
It's been a pleasure. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, that's all the time we have for on this installment of Africa in Business with Innocent Semosa, standing in, of course, for Tami Ngubeni. If you have missed any of our interviews, you can find them on www.channelafrica.co.za. Click on programming, look for Africa in Business, and you can find a podcast of whatever you have missed. From myself, Innocent Semosa, and the rest of the team behind the scenes, it's goodbye and God bless.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités